Hey guys, welcome to this live office hours. I'm Kimberly from the 37 Signal team, joined by Ashley from our customer support team. Thanks for joining us live. If you're here, let us know in the chat. We always like to know who's here joining us live. Hello, Francisco. Tell us where you're joining us from. Today's session is all about how to use Basecamp for a podcast. We use it with our own internal podcast. So I'm going to walk you through our actual accounts, show you all the details of how we use that product. Couple of things before we get started. You guys have found the chat. Again, let us know where you're from. If you have questions during the session, we're going to ask that you put them in the question section of our system here. So on the far right side of your screen, you'll see the chat icon at the top. Right below that is a question mark. If you have questions, post them there. Ashley will be looking at that during the session, and we'll get to them throughout the session and then at the end if we don't interrupt things for them. And yeah, that's what I have. Ashley, you have a couple things, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, so what we won't be going over today is kind of like basic tool stuff and how to use it. So if you are needing that, we have Basecamp 101 classes, basecamp.com/classes. I think Kimberly can put that up on the screen real quick. That is where you're going to have to go. We have tons of options for you, so give that a click. And then if you feel like you need more specific help, like one-on-one, after the session, reach out, support@basecamp.com. But this session will be recorded, and I will be emailing every single person anyway. So you could also just reply to that message. And then without really any further ado, let's Kimberly, I'll ask you to share your screen.
Yeah, dive in. Real quick. I put on support@basecamp.com is up on the screen that Ashley mentioned. And then right below us, she also mentioned a link to classes. So I'll keep that up for a while, and you guys can always access that at a future date. Wonderful. Okay, so without further ado, usually Ashley is sharing her screen. I'm kind of running things behind the scene. We're going to switch roles today because I'm going to walk you through the REWORK podcast. If you guys don't know, I host our REWORK podcast with our company founders, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen. It is a weekly podcast. We actually just put out an episode this morning. So I'm going to show you guys exactly how that works and how we do that in Basecamp. So let me share my screen. Ashley, let me know if you can see this, and we will get started.
Perfect. That's great.
Perfect. Okay, so this is my Basecamp home screen. I'm going to just walk through it quickly. I have some things stacked. Our 37 Signals projects, those are things like everyone in the company are on. Our 37 Signals HQ and our What Works project are ones everyone's on. I also have a kind of HR related project there as well. Some Basecamp projects stacked, some Hey projects stacked, lots of success and support projects in there. And then you'll see I also have the REWORK podcast. We'll dive into that one. But before I do that, I also have a project that's just for me called Me, Myself, and I. Almost everyone here at our company has a project that they just work in exclusively. No one else can see it. No one else has access to it. But it's where I kind of make notes to myself or might draft up a document before I post it somewhere else. And then we also internally have some fun projects. All Fitness is one that I have pinned. We have All Cooking, All Pets, but we also have some just social projects as well. So I'm going to dive into this one called the REWORK Podcast so that you can see it. I'll walk through the tools that we use. But before I do that, you can see at the top who is on this project. So it's me, Jason, and David are the main people on this project. And then you can see this 46 just following. This is an all access project, which you can see up here. That means anyone in the company can access this project if they want to. They're just not actively following it. So Jason, David, and myself are the ones who are active on it. And then 46 other people are just following along. So they won't get active notifications. They will see if they do an email summary activity that's happened throughout the day, but they're not getting notified about everything that's happening within this project. Ashley, I'm just going to go through the tools, but interrupt me at any time if you need to. So let's start with the schedule tool. Here I have a couple of things that you'll notice. So you can see that I have some cards that are dated. So those are cards from the card table that have due dates on them. And when they have due dates, then they automatically are showing up here on this schedule. So Wednesday, December 3rd is today. And we just put out an episode called Picking Pricing. It's actually currently in this approved, ready to post column. We'll actually move that to done when we get to the card table. We record once a week, typically on Tuesdays for an hour. The three of us record 2 episodes back to back. So every Tuesday, you'll see I have these placeholders like podcast recording A, topic to be determined, podcast recording B, topic to be determined. And then throughout the week, once I decide what we're actually going to record, then I just go into that placeholder and edit it and add details. So you can see I've done that for what we'll record next week. I've included a link to where we'll meet up to record it. Any notes that I've made for myself and for Jason and David all go on that kind of appointment, if you will. So that all ends up here on the schedule. Placeholders, most importantly, as you can imagine, Jason and David are very busy, sometimes traveling, sometimes here, working on other projects. We just have a standing appointment and then we move it around as we need to. I think that's it for the schedule.
Yep.
The main tool that we use in terms of the flow, it's a card table tool. We've renamed it to the workflow. You can see up here in this section, it's typically called triage. We've renamed it to podcast episode ideas. And here you can see just any of the episodes we've thought of. A lot of these are from their book REWORK. So I've made a note of which chapters of REWORK we have not yet done an episode about and have thrown a card up for there. There's also just some other ideas that have been thrown up into that podcast ideas section. You can see that both Jason and I are watching this card table, and this is a place that anyone in the company can drop a card. So I always am looking for podcast episode ideas. So if anyone in the company has one, they can just drop it in this card table. Jason and I will both get an alert about it, and we just have it in this kind of queue, and we can decide when we move something to okay, we're going to work on that. Mm-hmm. You can see my columns I have here scheduled, something is actually on the books, recorded, editing, approved, ready to post, and done. So this is the episode that just went live today. So I will move that to done and get that off the books. We have one that's recorded. It should be in the editing process soon. And then 2 that I have planned to record next week. These are the due dates that I mentioned. So this here, I put a Wednesday, December 10th deadline. For me, that's when it's actually going to publish. And then that date ties it back to the schedule. So it ends up on the schedule there.
I have a question. That kind of ties into somebody else's question. They said, just, how do I set up the product? How do I set up the schedule with to-dos? Here we're using cards instead of to-dos. Before card table existed, we'd used to-dos. And with that, we would have one episode was a to-do list. So you can structure it a little bit differently if that just kind of makes sense for how you're working and how you're thinking. I'm curious about your use of steps. Do you ever use steps within a card?
It's funny that you should ask that. I have a different project that I'll show you guys in a bit with the editor of our podcast. We don't use steps. I've started to think through maybe we should add some steps to this. So it is something that we absolutely could do, to be honest, because I'm the main person who works on this. There's not a lot of dividing of responsibilities. I haven't gone to the steps, but you absolutely could. If I was going to add steps, it would be things like pulling a transcript, writing show notes, creating a YouTube thumbnail, those kind of smaller tasks that don't need a column of its own, but are just smaller tasks. So you absolutely could. I just haven't, but you absolutely could.
Okay. Could you click on when is enough real quickly?
Yeah.
Recorded. Mm-hmm. And the steps are kind of, underneath the notes. So if somebody is not aware of how a card table works, that is kind of where you would put that information with a due date if you need to, or with an assignee if you need to. But they're meant to be kind of lo-fi, almost like mini to-dos. You can't bulk select or anything fun like you can with to-dos. But all to say, to-dos, card table, they could both potentially work.
Absolutely. And those also show when you check something off, if you go back to that card, you'll see 1 of 3 of the steps that are done. So just an additional layer of task management if you want to use that.
Nice.
Ashley, anything else on this card table before I move on to our other tools? Okay, perfect. So message board, we use this kind of rarely, to be honest, high level information that we want to stay in one place and kind of exist for a longer period of time. So you can see I have a couple here just about holiday release schedule. The end of last year, I did kind of some stats of the podcast to share with everyone. We opened a merch shop last year. So those are just continuing items that stay. You can see obviously like any message board, any kind of comments that are there back and forth, but it all stays in one place on the message board. We have that there just for longevity, but it's not something that we use on a daily, weekly, even monthly basis. You can see the last time I posted was December of 2024, and the next post will probably be December of 2025 when I give them an update of the podcast stats. Okay, so this Docs and Files tool, I have it called Episodes, Info, AV, etc., is something I'm in every single week. And you can see here several folders, but the folder I'm going to spend the most time on and that I typically spend the most time on is this podcast episodes. So you can see each of these folders is an individual episode. They scroll back every single week for the entire year. I have 2024 in its own folder, 2023 in its own folder, 2022 in its own folder. There were episodes prior to this, but that was prior to me being involved. So this is just the 2022 and on version. Let's go into this most recent folder. So every time I do an episode, I spin up a folder just like this and have very similar categories. I always have this first one is just my own notes. So it's a document. It has kind of an intro. I don't read it, but I always write it just for myself. So I have some thoughts in mind, some bullet points for us to think about, and then an outro as well. So that goes in every episode. Once I have the edited episode, both the transcript and the audio files go in this folder. So they're kind of always there and we can access them if we need to. Video also gets posted here. We recently moved to posting all of our videos in 4K. So they're very large files. Instead of uploading them to Basecamp, I just link to it on YouTube. I do have those files saved elsewhere, which I'll show you. I could upload them to Basecamp if I wanted to. It's just such large file sizes. Even though we don't pay for file storage, you guys probably pay for file storage. So you understand the need to sometimes selectively choose what you put into your folders. I mean, we're talking about multiple gigabytes per episode, and you guys saw how many episodes there are. So I just have opted not to put those in that folder. And then social clips. This one, I just made one. I always make little clips of the episode for Jason and David to share on social if they would like to. And so those go in this folder as well. I'm tagging them and they can grab it, download it, and use it as they need to. This is helpful too because every episode we can always go back and find it, have access to it. This episode, like I said, just went live today. There's a couple things I need to do to follow up on it. One of them being I always add a link here to where the episode exists on our website. So again, it's just a click away, get to it there, and like that's the episode. No one needs to hunt for it. I've just put it all in one place. So that is something that I need to do for this episode that just went live.
Nice. That's great.
And then we have two chat tools. You guys likely know by using that 3-dot menu and going to set up tools, you can add, turn off any of the tools. You can also do a duplicate tool. So I have this add another and have made two chat tools. One just called chat. That's for just our casual chat amongst ourselves. And one is a GitHub bot. So let me show you both of those. This one is using webhooks to link into anything that we've done related to this GitHub repo. You can see this morning, I just posted this episode. Sylvia on our ops team and I were working on it together when the branch was deleted. And actually, this is here under configure chatbox, if I'm not mistaken.
I actually just put a link to the support page just in case, because it's not a common one, so I'd rather if there are any questions, you can just click on that and kind of see what the deal is. So.
Perfect. And then this other chat is literally a chat between us, very short, typically casual conversations. It can be something as simple as like, I'm running late. We're skipping because we're launching Fizzy. So anything like that is just like a chat tool, just when we need to reach each other.
That was
super simple. And then one other tool within Basecamp I want to show you. This one we've actually kind of mocked up with some fake information, but it's literally a duplicate of what that tool looks like, just with some safer phone numbers. Didn't want to show any private customer information. But this tool that I've labeled voicemails and listener questions is our email forwarding tool. So oftentimes, I mean, I say it every week on the podcast, like you can email us. People will email us or they'll leave us a voicemail. When I get those in the REWORK email, I literally just forward them into this project so that they all stay in one place. I'm not having to look between my email and Basecamp. Everything is in Basecamp. It's just forwarded in. And then for me, I just make these notes to myself if I've used this listener's questions. So for example, someone emailed us this question here, and I'll write a note to myself, answered it on this date. It links back to the episode so that I know it's already taken care of. It's an easy way for me to see on this board, like which ones haven't we addressed in some way. Everything from voicemails, we have a Google Voice number. If someone calls, we can forward those in, as well as emails.
Beautiful.
Ashley, any questions on that before I move on?
Literally no questions have come in, folks. So if you have anything,
are you here?
Possibly because the questions are really like, I just need ideas on management. Like somebody submitted that early. And this is really everything related to management. But we're also at a very interesting part where we are about to go into the other side of managing. Like this all makes complete sense internally.
Yeah. So I do have one other tool. We just launched Fizzy yesterday. I'm going to show you guys that in a bit. But what I do want to show you is I actually have a separate project that I use for REWORK with my editor. So we have an outside third-party contractor that we use for editing the podcast. I do editing and can do it when we need to turn around something quickly, but just for a regular process, we have an external person do that. I could have added them to this project and added them to our 37 Signals account. Instead, I opted to put them on a completely separate place. Oftentimes, we're talking about, editing of our founders and editing me and making everyone sound their best. And so I just wanted that to be in a completely separate place. So I have a very similar project for me and the contractor to work on together. Has some similar tools, but fewer tools. So let's walk through that. So you can see this one is just our AV production. It's me and someone else. I could have set him up as a client, but this is an account that it's just the two of us on. So it's not a big deal for him to see anything. I'm not hiding anything from him. We're just kind of working on this project together. Message board. And for us, this message board is often about like travel. He's going to be gone. Here's when we need to get episodes done in order to facilitate deadlines. So there's always back and forth. That's typically what our message board posts are about. Sometimes there's some one-offs. We have a similar card table, except this one has episodes broken down into both audio and video. So for my internal purposes, it's just like, here's the episode. And obviously there's a lot more that go into it. On this board, we have it broken down, audio version, video version, and then we can communicate back and forth about each component of those episodes. Similar columns: recorded, ready for editing, review, approved. This triage section is not ideas because, again, he doesn't care about ideas. We're only on this board talking about actually producing the episodes. So I'm adding cards to this card table once I know an episode is going to happen. So for example, I have 2 episodes that we're going to record next week. I have an audio version and a video version. I have them in the triage section. Once they're recorded, I will drop them down here to this recorded section. And you'll see that he'll get a notification that something's been recorded. I often am writing notes about that. And actually, let's go to this week's episode. Once it's recorded, I'm dropping the files into Dropbox. So that is where we store our files back and forth instead of using Basecamp for that. We could use Basecamp for that, but there's often some back and forth. And I only want the final version in the Basecamp account of 37 Signals. So for example, if there's a first version and there's lots of edits, I don't need all of those versions in Basecamp. We just link to a Dropbox file. So I'm just telling him exactly where it can be found. It's recorded, ready for editing. When he has edited it and is ready for me to review it, he moves that card to review. I get a notification about that. So I know, like, okay, now it's time for me to go listen to it and see if I have any updates. You can see this one, we had a little bit of back and forth. There was some audio that was garbled. And so we're having a conversation about what parts to change, edit, such that we can correct all that. So there's a little bit of back and forth. And then once I'm done, I've moved it to approved, ready to post. He then knows, okay, there's nothing else for me to do. We're good to go. And then once it is published, I'll do that right now. We move those to done. So I can see easily, and our editor can see what's coming up next, where things are. I know that these are ready, but he has not yet started editing them. Again, these are the episodes coming up that all move along the workflow when it's time.
Perfect.
Similar, have a schedule with the due dates of when those episodes are going live. We have a chat as well, so some back and forth about just quick casual things. And then a door to the Dropbox. So even though I link within each of the cards to a specific folder, he could always just come here. It takes us to my Dropbox folder with every year of everything he could ever possibly need to find.
Beautiful.
I think that's it. That's all I got.
What is it? The only thing that came in earlier from the audience was, do you prepare the interviewees? So do you prepare Jason and David?
That's a great question. Let me go to, let's go here. Yes and no. So I do typically make some notes, for example, on this schedule. It's also noted in the card, just in case they go to either place, they'll have it. I do write a couple of thought starters. These are often for me as I'm just like thinking through the episode and thinking through some of the questions that I might ask, but also for them if they choose to look at it. Jason and David are such eloquent speakers if you listen to the podcast at all. And very often they show up to record and are like, what are we talking about today? Like they are just speaking off the cuff, which is amazing. So yes and no. The information is there. It's accessible in the project. Do they look at it all the time? Questionable. But I do write not only like some thought starters, but my intro and outro, like I showed on the docs and files.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Cool. A question came in from Ben, which is just not necessarily a Kimberly specific one, but it's about the chat from GitHub. Can you bring in comments and other chats from things like Notion? It's all using up on the API. So I'm not familiar with what Notion has available on their end. So you will just need to double check what they've got going on. And then the link to click on the article is just like, it's right there in the chat for chatbots and webhooks. So we'll sort that one out. But let us know. Okay, and then the other question that came up a little bit earlier too was, is there something that you wish you could do in the future with the podcast, I assume, but also about your process? Anything feel like it needs refining? Because it looks really great. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything I would change in the process, to be quite honest. As Ashley mentioned, you could set up each episode as a to-do list and spin up I'd use a template for that, spin up a new to-do list template for each episode. And that's something that we used to do prior to Cardtable. For me, I love Cardtable for things that have a process when it's not either done or not done, but it goes through stages. And so I think the workflow or the Cardtable tool works really well for that. While we're talking about that, can I show Fizzy, Ashley?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good transition. So this is all about Basecamp and how you can use Basecamp for a podcast. You likely know we just released yesterday a new product called Fizzy. It is a Kanban tool, so cards and columns, similar to the Cardtable. And for a period of time, as we were working on it internally, we were actually using Fizzy for the podcast, just so internally we could play with it and, have it as a use case. This that I'm showing you here is how you can do it completely in Basecamp, but there's also a way you can just do this Cardtable tool within Fizzy. I'm going to show it to you briefly. And then Ashley, has already dropped a link in the chat to the website. But this one here, actually, let's go have it open here. Similar Kanban style, just so visually fun. Each of these cards is an episode. So literally, this is the one that just went live this morning. I can drag that to done. You can see what has been recorded, what's scheduled, some ideas. There's things in Not Now. Each column can be opened and closed, and it's just visually super fun. And we've loved working on it. So that is another way if you wanted to track episodes along a progression. You could do it in Card Table with Basecamp if you want to keep everything in Basecamp, or if you just need that Kanban tool, you can do that in Fizzy here as well.
Looks great. Very fun. Visually fun. There's two questions. One of them is specific to Card Table in my mind. So I'm going to go with that one first.
Okay.
It was asked earlier, so again, not something that we'll see on the screen, but somebody had asked about episode idea collection and organization, right? So you have, when you click into triage, you have, these are the ideas.
Yep.
I don't know how many there are. Okay, there are 24. Of those 24, do you ever need to sort them, or are they all kind of like the same weight of being interesting?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't need to sort them. I kind of sort them into like, yes, I'm going to keep it around, or not now. Like I've actually physically rejected that for whatever reason. That's the only sorting that I really need to do. And Card Table works great for that. If you needed additional like filtering options, Fizzy is great for that because you can tag cards and you could sort by tag. If you wanted to tag categories, let's say, I have these tags as just podcasts, but if I wanted to tag this one as Fizzy and this one as Basecamp and this one as executive decisions and then filter the cards that way, you could absolutely do that in Fizzy. For my use case, I don't necessarily need to do that.
Yes. For the people who have like hundreds of ideas, which amazing, in case that is you, you could set up your own separate card table. Or if it's more like this, we've got 24. Kimberly could even add a column that goes before scheduled. And then that column could be like top ideas even, so you can still use your columns to organize and manage any ideas that kind of come up.
Yep. You could have a considering column or something to that effect.
Yeah. So
great idea.
When you started, and Ben had a question, how has this process matured since 2022?
Oh, and that is a question. That is a great question. When I first started hosting the podcast, which was October of 2022, there was a process. It just wasn't my process. And we didn't have Card Table. So it was just to-do list within this project. I think you can actually, at some point they were like archived and there were maybe hundreds of to-dos. Actually, some of the documents that are in this folder are relics to old things that have just kind of been around. I think my refinement has really just been the tools that we use in the way that we use them. Again, Card Table didn't exist. I don't know that there was much on the message board. There were some things on the message board as well. But when things kind of stay around, they just kind of float to the bottom and you don't really notice them over time. So I don't know that there's been much change since 2022. Other than the function of seeing their progress visually in a Kanban style, which I think is very helpful.
Yeah, it is. I think what people should also understand is that Kimberly is an excellent host, like naturally. I mean, over the years, of course.
So sweet.
As a human being has, built up certain skills that like make it very easy for her to be an excellent host. But some of that is just kind of inherent and learned and from experience too.
Thank you for saying that. Also, Jason and David make it very easy because they're such great speakers. I feel like they don't really need much in order for an episode to be really great. So we also don't do a ton of editing because they're such eloquent speakers. We might shorten an episode just to make it a little more energetic, not drag on, but it's not like we're getting rid of individual sentences very often. The editing process is typically fairly straightforward.
I have a question about that. When you are done with an episode, or maybe okay, the question is when you are trying to pick out clips that either of them could use for social afterwards, or do you just remember, like, you know what, he said something really funny and, in the very beginning, or like a
Yeah.
very eloquent thing was said at the end, or in the moment, are you like, ooh, that was a good one, and you write it
Yeah.
down?
That's a good question. So not in the moment. To be honest, I kind of black out a little bit when we're recording. I very rarely, like, remember specific moments. I might remember that was a great episode, but I very rarely am like, "Ooh, timestamp 4:27." After I get the edited video version, I'm having to watch through it just to make sure it's good. There aren't any issues. I'm doing that as part of the editing process with the editor. So I'm watching it usually in 2x speed. And at that point, I am figuring out, like, okay, this is a good section. Like, this is spicy or energetic. And they have to be like succinct. The clips that I pull for social are usually like a minute and a half, maybe. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, it's during the editing process, my review process, that I'm figuring out where are the moments we might want to tighten something up for social.
Nice. Good. About how many clips do you tend to get? Because I feel like you could David
Yeah,
is so funny visually.
I
He's so
know.
expressive.
It it actually depends per episode. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4 or 5.
Nice.
It just really depends, to be honest. I try to get at least 2 per episode. This most recent one, I just pulled 1 clip that I thought was really strong. But I know for them, they're not gonna post it unless it's really strong.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for me to, like, make 6, 7, or 8 when they're not gonna post that many in a week. So I usually am looking for, like, 2 to 3, like, really strong, succinct, energetic clips, for them to use.
Nice. Cool.
I feel like if you have a podcast, and I'm curious, people who are here, if you have a podcast, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, like, I'd be curious to know kind of what your situation is. So let us know that in the chat. But I feel like it's so important to have some sort of organizational system. Basecamp obviously is so great for that. And you can customize the tools that you need. But there's so many details that go into it. I feel like a lot of times people think, I'm going to start a podcast. Okay, that's one part of it, is getting behind the mic, but there's so much more that go into it, and keeping things on schedule, being consistent, having a place to store things, getting everyone on the same page, like all of those things. I think a lot of people just don't think about when they're like, I'm just going to record a podcast. But that organizational level is so important, and Basecamp is so, not to make a sales pitch, but it's so great for keeping everything organized and all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
I would be using Basecamp for this even if I didn't work here.
True.
So,
That's how we found you anyway. She was also using Basecamp before.
yeah.
Well.
Oh, Ben, I see your note. Thinking more for blogging to start similar workflow. It's absolutely a similar workflow for any kind of process of production, putting things out in media. It's a very similar process.
That would definitely work. Jordan, Buzzcast using Basecamp for years. Nice. I wonder if anything is, are you going to do anything differently as a result of this particular office hours session? You already
question for Jordan.
Do you have your editor within your project? Some people might just use one project instead of two.
Yeah. And I absolutely could have done that, to be honest. I just chose not to. I chose to keep it separate. Often because there's sometimes a lot of back and forth about, like, making something more succinct, or like taking out filler words, things that, like, not everyone needs to know about, to be honest. It doesn't need to be like something anyone could publicly search for. So it's available, but it's in a completely separate project.
That's a good point. Because from my perspective, as someone who's 46, just following, I'm one of them. If I'm coming into this project, it is to find a particular episode, and someone's like, hey, maybe, I don't know, this hasn't happened, but the audio might be mismatched by like 1 second or something. Then I can come into this space. I don't need to see the back and forth.
Right.
At all. It doesn't need to come up when I'm searching in the slightest. So
yeah,
I see why you have to, for sure. Makes sense.
And Jordan is saying that he is the editor for a podcast. And I think this is also a great use scenario. I would, and Jordan, I assume that you do, have a project per client, and it's each client's project is on each client's podcast is a separate project that you can have access to all of it, and keep things on track that way.
Interesting. Future episode ideas in Basecamp rather than my notes app. Yep. You really can. And if your ideas are really intense and they don't feel right for the card table, I've seen people use docs and files, rename it to ideas, and then they'll organize it like these ideas, 6 of them are about, how this thing runs, and the other one, there we go. Yeah. He's the co-host of something or, something else. So you could organize all of it in a couple of different ways.
Okay, Buzzsprout. You said Buzzcast, and I was like, I don't know what Buzzcast is.
Co-host of Buzzsprout Podcast and the producer.
Nice. We're super fans of Buzzsprout, as you know.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, that was it for questions.
Oh my goodness. No more questions. What a delight this has been.
But if questions do come up, you all can always ask after the fact. Even if it's to me, I'll be sending you an email anyway. So if you ask me, I will make sure to get the right answer from Kimberly or Jason or David or, I don't know, the other person that you work with, even if it's specific to them. So we'll get your questions answered.
Ashley, do you want to tell these folks about the Basecamp community before we wrap up?
Oh, do I? Always. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let me put a link in there. So the Basecamp community, and maybe I'll just share my screen real quick, just since we're here. It's like 2,200 people, 2,000 plus people. It's a good chunk of individuals, everybody who is a Basecamp user, either of like 20 plus years or 2 months. And you can really see kind of in that space, and we'll head over there now, actually. We have a place for you to kind of like, here's what to do here. Here are my suggestions. Most importantly, do I have a question for the community? Do I have a really cool idea that just happened, or like a success story even? So, and do I just want to talk to other people in this space? So this is a group of people who, if you are looking for more peers who are using Basecamp for podcast work, this is a great place to look, great place to ask any questions, kind of about anything related to Basecamp. They are extremely helpful. So just head over to basecamp.com/community, scroll to the bottom, and then you will see a link, a couple quick questions, and I'll invite you in.
Perfect. And I just put that link below us as well.
Nice.
Just click that. Join the Basecamp community. You're so welcome. And Ben Buchwald, I see your question, which is, I might have already answered this, but I didn't. What software are you using to record and edit the podcast? So for recording, we use a piece of software called Squadcast. We are all recording separately in our own separate locations. So finding a time that works across time zones, and we use Squadcast for that. And then for editing, when I do editing, I'm using Final Cut Pro for the video, and a program that's open source called Audacity for audio. My editor uses Adobe Premiere Pro. So we have 2 different systems, but edited through those pieces of software.
StreamYard. Cool.
And then we use our friends at Buzzsprout for posting to all the podcast networks. Okay, friends. Well, if you guys don't have any questions, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for joining us. I think we're done.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good rest of your day.
We'll see you next time. Bye for now.